Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the United Therapeutics Corporation Phase 3 Advanced Outcomes Clinical Trial Results Conference Call. My name is Jamie, and I will be your conference operator today. All participants on the call portion of this webcast will be in a listen-only mode until the question and answer portion of this earnings call. If you would like to ask a question during that time, simply press star and the number 1 on your telephone keypads. If you would like to withdraw your questions, you may press star and 2. Please also note today's event is being recorded. At this time, I'd like to turn the floor over to Mr. Harry Silvers, Investor Relations Manager at United Therapeutics.
Thank you, Jamie. Good day, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the United Therapeutics Corporation Phase 3 Advanced Outcomes Clinical Trial Results Conference Call. Remarks today will include forward-looking statements representing our expectations or beliefs regarding future events. These statements involve risks and uncertainties that may cause actual results to differ materially. Our latest SEC filings, including Forms 10-K and 10-Q, contain additional information on these risks and uncertainties. We assume no obligation to update forward-looking statements. Today's remarks may discuss the progress and results of clinical trials or other developments with respect to our products. These remarks are intended solely to educate investors and are not intended to serve as the basis for medical decision-making or to suggest that any products are safe and effective for any unapproved or investigational uses. Full prescribing information for products is available on our website. Accompanying me on today's call are Dr. Martine Rothblatt, Chairperson and Chief Executive Officer, Michael Benkowitz, President and Chief Operating Officer, Dr. Leigh Peterson, Executive Vice President of Product Development and Xenotransplantation, Dr. Derek Solum, our Senior Director of Product Development and lead for the Global Advanced Outcomes Program, and Dr. Daniel Lachant, Associate Professor of Medicine at University of Rochester Medicine and one of the principal investigators on the Advanced Outcomes study. Now I will turn the webcast over to Martine to begin our overview. Martine?
Thank you, Harry, and good morning, everyone. There are days for which you work your entire life, and this is that day for me and dozens of my teammates at United Therapeutics. Today is the day we announce that we proved our unique pill, ralinepag, a new chemical entity, is more than 3 times likely to avoid disease progression events from pulmonary hypertension as compared to taking the standard of care background double therapy of an ETRA and a PDE5 inhibitor. When, like me, you have a daughter with pulmonary hypertension, slashing the likelihood of disease progression is everything. This is a remarkable result, not matched in any trial of a prostacyclin or a pill that I'm aware of. This is why I call ralinepag a super prostacyclin. It is just once a day orally. It has greater potency, meaning receptor binding, than any other prostacyclins, and it is uniquely durable in its clinical trial results that argue for frontline treatment promptly upon patient diagnosis. It has best-in-class pharmacokinetics with the longest half-life and most stable plasma concentrations. This is what powers its once-daily dosing. No other prostacyclin or pill of any kind has ever met its clinical worsening endpoint in PAH with a hazard ratio nearly as good as the 0.5 that we unblinded today. 0.45. Wow. Our clinical trial met its primary endpoint with a p-value of less than 0.0001. In addition, in our secondary endpoints, we showed a statistically significant clinical improvement compared to background therapy, and as soon as week 28. Indeed, our treated group was 47% more likely to improve. Again, just speaking as a parent, this is huge. Because ralinepag is so favorably differentiated from other prostacyclin-based pills, based on these pivotal trial results, I believe if approved by the FDA, doctors will prescribe and payers will reimburse ralinepag not only in lieu of such pills, but as frontline therapy. The trial we unblinded today shows that ralinepag works in every type of subgroup that we analyzed. This gives me great confidence that it will become prescribed for tens of thousands of patients, more patients than all of our current drugs combined. The data we are sharing today supports all patients on single or double background therapy, at least 30,000 in the U.S. alone being prescribed ralinepag as well. This is transformative for PAH, transformative for the lives of all the patients, their families, and their healthcare teams, and transformative for all of us at United Therapeutics. Today would be the best day in the life of any biotech company. Yet, I want to remind everyone that just last quarter we unblinded our Teton trial, showing that our Tyvaso medicine had the best clinical trial results for pulmonary fibrosis of any drug ever approved by the FDA. I don't think a biotech company could be in a better position than are we. Our best-in-class news is flying in formation, marking the skies with solid statistical proof that in our diseases, no one has better science, technology, and execution capability. This is the day we have been working for since we began working at United Therapeutics. This is the goal we've been striving for over the past decade, proving that we have a unique proprietary pill that is well tolerated and that has proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that it is effective in multiple ways, even on top of dual background therapy. This is a wow moment for the field. I'm now going to turn the call over to the scientist who proved this wow, our company's lead ultramarathoner and 100-miler outcomes clinical trial leader, Dr. Derek Solum. Derek?
Thanks, Martine. It's a real privilege to be here today and to get to share these exciting results. As Martine noted, this is a project we have been working on for many, many years. And so it's great to see the fruits of our labor and to be able to share these exciting results with you. I'm going to spend just a little bit of time sort of level setting so everybody kind of remembers what the study is about, because it has been a few minutes. And so as you can see on the slide, the primary endpoint for this study is a time to first adjudicated clinical worsening event. The study was straightforward in that it was randomized 1-to-1. So one participant received active ralinepag for every participant that received placebo. We powered the study to find 180 adjudicated events before we could close it, and the study was powered with at 80% to determine a 0.65 hazard ratio in the study. We also wanted to look at a number of important secondary endpoints to speak to the disease state and to the study results, and that those secondary endpoints are listed on the slide, and predominantly it's a change from baseline to week 28 in the usual suspects, the NT-proBNP, 6-minute walk distance, functional class, etc. We also added a very important endpoint, the clinical improvement endpoint to the study, because we feel that not only do we want to demonstrate that you can delay participants' disease from getting worse, but we wanted to show that it got better. And so we added this endpoint into the study. And then there's a number of others that are listed on the slide, and I won't go into a lot of details here, but suffice it to say we were looking at a lot of ways to determine whether or not ralinepag really demonstrated a clinically meaningful change in people who were in the study. So here, if you can go to the next slide. I want to kind of get a detail around what the clinical worsening definition is, because it's a little complicated. It's a composite definition, and you can see in the bullets on the slide that composite composed of all-cause mortality, non-elective hospital admission, and that needed to be at least 24 hours, and it needed to be due to PAH. You could have also met the definition by initiating parenteral or inhaled prostacyclin therapy. We have a disease definition, disease progression definition, which is a composite in and of itself, including a 6-minute walk distance drop of 15%, worsening of functional class, or initiation of additional escalation of PAH therapy. We also added an unsatisfactory long-term clinical response criteria because for a study that goes on this long, we wanted to make sure that anybody who maintained functional class 3 or 4 had any drop in their 6-minute walk distance after 28 weeks of treatment would meet that definition, because we really, like I said before, wanted to not just show that we could delay people from getting worse, but really getting better. So anybody who was not improving, we wanted to be able to allow them to move to the open label extension study. And I didn't emphasize that anybody who met the definition could move to the open label extension to receive active ralinepag. We also moved everybody else that study closer to the open label extension study as well. So this is the kind of key point to the study design. Now here, if you go to the next slide, please. The baseline demographics are pretty important in this study, because what it really speaks to is the fact that this is a contemporary real world study. You can see that the age at study entry is predominantly in the 50s. It predominantly affected females. And those are not huge surprises, other than we're seeing participants a little bit older. You can see the time since diagnosis that overall was about 4.5 years. The specific ethnicities and races is not a real surprise, but it does speak to who we are seeing in the clinic. And so you can kind of see the breakdown there. More importantly, if we go to the next slide, continuing the baseline demographics, is I want you to kind of key in on the background therapy. And you can see that, importantly, 80% of the people in the Advanced Outcomes study were on dual background therapy, predominantly an ERA and a PDE5. 20% of those were on monotherapy. So again, ever since the publication and the AMBITION results, the community has adapted their change to start people on dual combination therapy. And so that is most of the people who were enrolled in the study were on 2 backgrounds therapy. So they're a heavily pretreated population. And if you look at the baseline 6-minute walk distance, you can see that on average, participants were walking about 440 meters. So they're meeting that low risk criteria threshold. So this is an early disease state population. And we did stratify the study and eligibility, and you can see that one of those stratification factors was above and below 400 meters. And again, you can see that predominantly people were walking over 400 meters. Lastly, you can see, if we look at WHO functional class, that the vast majority of participants were in the functional class 2 category, with a few functional class 3, about a third of those. We did allow people who were functional class 4, but we only had one participant who was enrolled with that criteria. So again, overall, the take-home message is that this is contemporary, this is real world, and it is the type of participants that we're seeing in the community. I also don't have a slide, but I do want to emphasize that we did want this to be real world, and so our eligibility criteria are aligned with current ERS ESC guidelines, and we've taken into consideration the recommendations from the World Symposium. So our hemodynamic eligibility criteria meet those. So it's really important to see that this study does really enroll the people who we're seeing in the community now. And now, Harry, if you don't mind going to the next slide, this is my favorite slide that has been sort of burned into my retinas recently. And you can see this is the Kaplan-Meier graph that shows the separation. The blue line is ralinepag, red line is placebo. And you can see that separation happens very early, and then the separation between the treatment and the placebo groups is robust, it continues, and it is very durable. This Kaplan-Meier graph goes to 4 years, speaking to the durability of the treatment effect. Importantly, you can see, and this was shown on the intro slide, that the significance, we are so incredibly confident because this is a highly statistically significant difference with a hazard ratio of 0.45, demonstrating a 55% reduction in the risk of achieving a clinical worsening event. We couldn't be happier with these results, and it's taken us a long time to get there. But the durability in treatment effect in this heavily pretreated population really speaks volumes to how well this molecule works. Now, kind of carrying on, Harry, to the next slide, you can see the breakdown of the primary endpoint. And I gave you the definition a little bit earlier. And what you can see here is that the driver of the clinical worsening definition was disease progression. And you can see there is a threefold decrease in the number of people who had disease progression in the active treatment group. We also saw benefits of the initiation of inhaled or infused therapies and that unsatisfactory long-term clinical responders. We've done sensitivity analyses where we've removed the unsatisfactory responders from this population, and we find that the numbers really don't change. It's a 0.49 hazard ratio, and significance is still just as good. We weren't surprised to see that there were not many hospitalizations or deaths, because I want to emphasize that this is a intermediate low risk population, heavily pretreated. So the fact that we have such low mortality across the study is really no surprise, and in fact a good thing, really. Here, if you go to the next one, I want to just continue to drill down on that, the impressive results in the disease progression. Here you can see the Kaplan-Meier graph, and again, very, very early in the treatment, within a few weeks, you see separation between the treatment group and the placebo group, and that separation does not change. In fact, it just continues to grow, and we're really just pleased with this four-year period that we're demonstrating here. Again, the hazard ratio is showing a 75% reduction in risk that is highly statistically significant. Very, very great results that we're very happy to see. Now, moving forward again, Harry, I want to just emphasize the importance of what the study results mean, and that's using this forest plot with a lot of subgroup analyses. And you can see that in the middle is the break between where we favor ralinepag on the left and placebo on the right. And I just can't emphasize enough that it doesn't matter what treatment subgroup you are in, ralinepag still shows a highly significant difference. It doesn't matter if you're walking 400 meters or more. It doesn't matter if you are in the CTD etiology or if you have the other etiologies. Excuse me. It doesn't matter if you're on one background therapy or two, if you're young or old, or if you're male or female. Every single subgroup analysis strongly favors treatment with ralinepag, and we're just so happy to see this. Again, moving forward to more subgroup analyses, we can see that it doesn't matter if you're functional class 2, 3, or 4, or if you're on an ERA or PDE5 or both for that matter. We don't have a dose limit in this study, but we find that also doesn't matter, that you could be on a less than 600 microgram dose, or you could be over, and it still shows very significant. And it doesn't matter if you're in Brazil or France or in Singapore. All of the results geographically demonstrate that there's a nice significant benefit to being treated with ralinepag. One more group here, if you don't mind, Harry, is to look at some of the baseline hemodynamics, and we can see that regardless of where your hemodynamics lie, for your mean pressures or your PVR, we still see great benefits, and it also doesn't matter what your NT-proBNP is or how long you've had the disease. So it just emphasized that we should be adding this early in order to delay the disease from progressing. The last little group you see on this slide is the baseline risk category. So this is the low risk category. So which breaks down into the walk, the functional class, and the NT-proBNP, and you can either have none of those low risk criteria or all three, and we still show benefits just across the board. So impressive. Moving forward just a little bit, I do want to just touch on the side effect component, because we have a very robust pharmacovigilance group who's been working on this project from the beginning, and because this is a new chemical entity for us, we wanted to make sure that we didn't miss anything, and you can see that there is no surprises here. And so the adverse events that we see are the usual suspects for prostacyclins, headache, diarrhea, nausea, myalgia, and some jaw pain. But again, not a surprise in the percentages, more in the ralinepag treated group, but also not the numbers, not too overwhelming. And also for a study that went on for 7 years, it's not a surprise to see these sort of numbers. So no surprises from a safety standpoint, which is great as a clinical trialist. That's always one of the first things we want to make sure, and just such outstanding efficacy results. So with that in mind, I just want to, Harry, if you go back to the summary slide really quick, just to really emphasize how significant the results are here, that we benefited, the delay from disease progression. We also have a lot of key secondary endpoints that we'll be disseminating in the coming weeks, and also the safety profile is as we expect. So with that in mind, I actually want to turn it over to a colleague and friend, Dr. Dan Lachant, who is an associate professor of medicine at the University of Rochester. Dan has been on the study from the very beginning. He's the highest enroller in the United States, and he has as much experience with the molecule and with being in the study as anybody. So with that in mind, Dan.
Perfect. Thank you, Derek. So as a physician who treats pulmonary arterial hypertension, I share Martine's enthusiasm, and I'm just so very excited for these results and to be here today to talk about ralinepag. First off, I just want to thank all the patients who participated in the study, all the sites, and United Therapeutics for conducting and completing this pivotal study through the COVID-19 pandemic, a very challenging time, and they came out on top with home run results. So someone who uses a significant amount of oral and parenteral prostacyclin therapy in pulmonary hypertension, these results, once again, are just amazing. Based on my experience in the study, the results track with what I observed clinically. To have a once-a-day titratable prostacyclin receptor agonist with comparable or improved tolerability relative to our other oral therapies currently approved, and show such an impressive reduction in clinical worsening in what's been said multiple times, a contemporarily treated cohort patients, nearly 100% on background therapy, 80% on dual combination therapy, primarily functional class 2, high baseline 6-minute walk distance. That's what blows me away and gets me excited about this data. No other oral prostacyclin has shown such impressive results like this. Selexipag, which showed a reduction in clinical worsening, and they had a much higher risk cohort of patients, so it's easier to show that kind of a benefit. And only a third were on dual combination therapy, so it's really hard to extrapolate those results forward. And then subsequent trials of selexipag in the setting of dual background therapy didn't show any benefit over placebo. Oral treprostinil showed a reduction in clinical worsening, but that was more in monotherapy patients and after recent diagnosis. So in this well-treated functional cohort with an average duration, once again it's been said, of 4 years, ralinepag was able to reduce the risk of clinical worsening with curves diverging around week 8 to 16 and remaining separated throughout the remainder of the study. Importantly, it also showed improvement in 6-minute walk distance during a clinical worsening study, something that's very difficult to do, something that wasn't seen with the other oral prostacyclins. And even in a 6-month study, having such a high baseline to begin with makes it even more impressive that ralinepag was able to show that. As Derek just went over, all the subgroup analyses are internally consistent with the primary findings, which is great to see that everybody benefits from the drug. Like Derek said, it doesn't matter the type of PAH, it doesn't matter where you start, it doesn't matter what your PVR is, everybody found benefit from ralinepag. And once again, the patients are representative of non-parenterally treated patients in a traditional pulmonary hypertension clinic. If you're on background therapy, you're typically functional class 2, and these etiologies of PAH is what we see in our clinic. And it just makes the results more translatable and easier to explain to patients, which is great. And with the frequent study visits and proactive evaluation to pick up changes in the patients in the study, I'm not surprised about the clinical worsening outcomes just being clinical worsening, disease progression, and unsatisfactory response, and that hospitalization and mortality aren't hidden. That's just because we're so attuned and good at picking up changes sooner that we don't let patients progress to that part. So I'm not surprised that there was no changes with those, or no difference between the two. The side effects reported are also what would be expected based on the mechanism of action and similar to what we see with other prostacyclin therapies. As Derek said, we enrolled 14 patients at our site. We were able to manage side effects in all of them, no patient dropped out because of untreated side effects or inability to tolerate ralinepag, which speaks volumes about the once-daily pharmacokinetics and tolerability. Even early on in the COVID-19 pandemic, patients who had started the study were willing to drive 10-hour round trips to continue in. We had patients flying back from different parts of the country to complete study visits because they didn't want to give up this drug. They felt that the benefit they were experiencing was just worth it for them. And one thing is ralinepag may be showing us that prostacyclin side effects, although the pharmacokinetics definitely are better, they may be more manageable if patients actually feel clinical benefit to go along with it. So instead of just preventing clinical worsening, when patients feel improvement in their exercise capacity, side effects become more mild and easier to tolerate. And there's been over 1,000 years of patient observation on ralinepag so far, and there have been no new unexpected side effects attributed to ralinepag. And ralinepag also has the benefit of not needing frequent lab draws to monitor blood counts or anything else. So the titration also makes it easier on patients and providers to make adjustments. Based on the current data, ralinepag has the potential to be used in many different clinical scenarios following approval. Early on after initiation of combination therapy, even frontline therapy in some patients, and stable patients on background therapy to prevent clinical worsening or help improve functional capacity further. The data supports its use in all those different areas. Future studies still need to help better understand transition options for select patients who are well treated on parenteral Remodulin. Potential strategies for using parenteral Remodulin to achieve higher doses of ralinepag quickly, similar to strategies evaluated in the EXPEDITE study, and even more exciting as a replacement for other oral prostacyclin therapies that are more burdensome in administration and have significantly more side effects which greatly impact quality of life. So this is just an exciting time for patients with pulmonary arterial hypertension as the number of therapeutic options continue to expand. Ralinepag does have the potential to become a preferred oral prostacyclin therapy early on. It's durable and has clinically meaningful reduction and something we all care about. The flexible titration makes it so that you can find a dose for every patient that provides benefit. And importantly, its side effect profile is just so much more favorable compared to what's currently available. And this allows it to potentially become broader access to the prostacyclin pathway in all patients with PAH. And now I'll turn the call back over to Martine to close.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lachant. And that was like the best 360-degree coverage of everything from the trial and the treatment realities that exist today in the next few years. So, again, as a parent of a patient and one who knows many, you're a blessing to the field. Thank you so much, Dr. Lachant. Operator, you can now open up the call to any questions.
And at this time, we'll begin that question and answer session. To ask a question, you may press star and then 1 using a touch-tone telephone. To withdraw your questions, you may press star and 2. If you are using a speakerphone, we do ask that you please pick up the handset prior to pressing the keys to ensure the best sound quality. Once again, that is star and then 1 to join the question queue. Our first question today comes from Andreas Argyrides from Oppenheimer. Please go ahead with your question.
Good morning, and congrats on these impressive results. Thanks for taking our question. How are you thinking about the opportunity for patients to switch from to a once daily from a twice daily, given the strength of these results? And how big do you think ralinepag can really be? Again, congrats on these results.
Thank you for the question, Andreas. Derek has really the most experience with all of the dynamics of the different oral medications for treating pulmonary hypertension. So, Derek, could you answer that question?
Sure, Martine. Thanks, Andreas, for the call. So I think anytime you can reduce the pill burden for this patient population, I think you have a great opportunity. Like I said, the population is heavily treated. They already take a lot of medications, and I think just from a compliance, that if you can reduce their pill burden, improve the patient compliance, ultimately that's going to to really speak to the durability and effect. So I think that in itself is a big factor outside of the fact of the pharmacokinetics and the treatment effect here. And I think that was the primary point of the question.
Thank you, Derek. Thanks, Derek. Andreas, another thing that I would add, again, being very close to the patients, when there is a new pill that comes out that demonstrates these sort of results in reduction of disease progression, and somebody is on another pill that has not demonstrated these results, as Dr. Lachant explained, it's I think very highly incumbent upon the healthcare team to go ahead and make the switch that you're referring to. Certainly, if you put yourself in the shoes of a patient, you would ask for Ralinepag. Next question.
Our next question comes from Roanna Ruiz from Leerink Partners. Please go ahead with your question.
Hey, morning, everyone. I was curious, how should we think about prescriber uptake of Ralinepag in PAH, given how some other newer agents like sotatercept are layering into the treatment paradigm and possibly moving into earlier line use as well?
Thanks, Roanna. Since we have a great prescriber on the call, I'd like to ask Dr. Lachant to kindly answer that question.
Yeah, that's a great question. So based on my experience with the study, based on the data that was just presented today, and based on the ease of use, the way I see this playing out for a new diagnosis patient is they're started on initial upfront combination, and once they get situated on a steady dose, I plan on layering Ralinepag next. I think it's a well-tolerated once-a-day pill, and the patient pill burden, blood draw, it just makes it easier, and then other therapies would potentially be added on after that.
Thanks so much, Dr. Lachant. Operator, next question.
Our next question comes from Olivia Breyer from Cantor. Please go ahead with your question.
Hi, good morning, and thank you for the question, and congrats again on these results. Can you give us any details at this point around adverse event profile, just in terms of severity for some of those events? And I think I heard that there were no discontinuations due to AEs. Can you just confirm if that's the case? And Martina, I just wanted to ask you kind of more broadly, as you think about the PAH market, where Ralinepag really fits into your overall commercial strategy, especially in light of last week's soft mist inhaler disclosure. Thank you, guys.
Sure. So for all of the first questions you asked about AE, Derek would be, I think, the best person to talk about that. Derek?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so no, it's not true that nobody discontinued due to AEs. We did have discontinuations overall in the study. It was allowed 11%, less than 10% in the active group. So much better than the other pivotal trials in the space. The AE profile was very consistent with other prostacyclins, and I showed that kind of at the end with headache, nausea, and myalgias are kind of the lead AEs. So ultimately, I think that the profile matches the long half-life and allows us to kind of titrate into a treatment effect that avoids the severe AEs. We've collected a lot of data around that, and we'll be disseminating that in the future in the granularity around the AEs. But like I said, there was no safety signals that were unsurprising here.
Thanks, Derek. Olivia, with regard to the amazing product we announced last week of Tresmi, the way to think about pulmonary hypertension, at least the way we think about it, is, inhaled is a very different kind of situation from the rest of PH. And inhaled is primarily focused on the ILD population, where there's been a legacy of data contraindicating systemic treatments. So we see that the Tresmi product is perfect for the ILD population, where it can reduce by up to 90% the main side effect causing people using DPIs to discontinue or even not to really start. We think that the SMIs can cover that entire space. There is a portion of the non-IRB population that does use inhaled therapy, but now that it's available to have just a once-a-day pill, it would be kind of like, I mean, there will always be some people using every type of therapy, but I think from the patient's perspective, the prescriber's perspective, it would be much better just to take one, a pill once a day than to go ahead and deal with a multiple times a day inhalation. I should also mention at this point, Olivia, that in our skunkworks division, where we develop new products like the SMI that we announced, we are also working on a once-a-day combination pill that would combine the ETRA PD5 as well as ralinepag. So just in a single dosage, the patient can get all of that. And that will be, more formally announced as we move a little bit deeper into the year. Next question.
Our next question comes from Roger Song from Jefferies. Please go ahead with your question.
Great. Congrats for the data as well, and then thank you for taking our question. My question may be related to the access and then reimbursement RAM. So how should we think about this data? Is mostly in the intermediate risk, seems more suitable for earlier stage of disease, and then how should we think about this will be used as a first line versus the Selexipag, maybe go to generic in the near term, and then also related to the hospitalization and death impact, understanding this is a little bit lower risk population, and how this profile will impact the payer decision. Thank you.
Wow, there's a lot of questions there, and there's so many people on the line. We're only going to really take a subset of all of them. I'd like to ask Dr. Lachant to respond as best you could to that array of questions, basically relating to how you expect to use ralinepag in your practice.
Yes, so ralinepag, and it's kind of like how we think of statin therapy, is when you're preventing clinical worsening, you're preventing somebody from experiencing something they don't know would have happened. So because of that, it's better to start it earlier when they're well. So once again, prostacyclin pathway is a pillar in pulmonary arterial hypertension. So having an easy, well-tolerated medication that can target that pathway, even if you start out at lower doses and titrate up over 6 months, I feel like it'll provide great benefit to patients. So for me, the way I'm going to start looking at this once it gets FDA approval is offer it to patients 1 month after diagnosis, saying this is something that's going to pay dividends in the future. I don't care about 1-3 years. I'm caring about 10, 15, 20 years down the road. So, and if the best way to maximize this is to start early, that's what I'm going to offer to patients.
Thank you, Dr. Lachant. And I'll just add one more comment with regard to your question, Jason, about Selexipag going generic. I think it's completely irrelevant. This data is much better than the data that came out of the Griffin study. And we saw exactly this same situation when sildenafil went generic. We were selling branded Cialis, tadalafil, and we called it Adcirca. And when it was, again, much simpler for the patients to take once a day instead of multiple times a day, amazing data, and the vast majority of the prescriptions went to Adcirca. And sildenafil going generic was an irrelevant data point. And I think the same situation will be the case with Selexipag. It will simply become irrelevant in terms of the prescribing patterns of physicians in this field. Operator, next question.
Our next question comes from Lisa Walter from RBC. Please go ahead with your question.
Oh, good morning. Thanks for taking our question and congrats on the results today. Just curious, maybe a question for Dr. Lachant, if he's still on the line. Wondering if you can expand how you would use ralinepag in your patients in your practice today if the drug was ultimately approved. Would you start this in new patients? Would you switch over existing patients from other treatments? Any color here would be helpful. Thanks.
Thanks, Dr. Lachant.
Yes,
Dr.
great question.
Lachant?
So, yep, I would certainly start it in all my new patients 1 month after just getting the other therapies on board, just to minimize side effects. As you're starting a drug, you don't want to blast necessarily right away, and just get things cooled down. To your question about transitioning, as Martine said, and I agree 100%, just like we figured out how to transition patients from selexipag to Orenitram, I would start doing that early in patients who are well compensated, lower doses of oral prostacyclins. I would offer ralinepag as a potential option for them. And then as further data comes out and we figure out how to transition from stable Remodulin and things like that, my personal experience, we had one person who was on ralinepag who had to go on Remodulin because of clinical worsening, and the doses that person achieved was astronomically high without any Remodulin side effects. And to be honest, I don't think the person improved after we put them on Remodulin. So I'm not sure we really did them a favor. We followed what we thought was the best decision, but I don't know if it was the best for the patient. And ralinepag just has a very potent receptor profile, and because of that, you get benefit that almost all patients, like Martine said, not every patient, but a lot of patients will be able to benefit from.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lachant. Next question, please.
Our next question comes from Jason Gerberry from Bank of America. Please go ahead with your question.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my questions and congrats on the data. Wondering, I think you guys in a prior call mentioned running studies with prostacyclins in combination with Winrevair in early patients. Given kind of how you framed SMI versus ralinepag, is it fair to think that any future combination studies with Winrevair would be with ralinepag and not SMI? And your comment about only a small portion of I think inhaled sales coming from non-ILD settings. I think in the past there was something like a 50-50 kind of revenue split or understanding of PAH versus PH-ILD. So just wondering how 2025, if you can kind of give us an update on how that revenue split looked. Thanks.
So because we're going to focus this call on ralinepag, I'm going to skip over the revenue split question, which was kind of a little bit convoluted anyway. So just going right to the combination with Winrevair, yes, in fact, our discussions with its sponsor have focused on ralinepag as being the most logical agent to combine it with. Next question.
Our next question comes from Terence Flynn from Morgan Stanley. Please go ahead with your question.
Great. Thanks so much. Congrats on the data. One for Dr. Lachant. I was just wondering if you look at, your potential ralinepag use on the forward, if you think you'll use it in a similar number of patients or more patients than your current number of patients on Uptravi and Orenitram combined. So just trying to understand if you see this expanding the oral market or ultimately over time if you're going to have a similar number of patients on oral prostacyclins. Thank you.
I think this is greatly going to expand. Yep, I think this is greatly going to expand the oral prostacyclin market. There are many patients who we kind of talk about saying, oh, this person would be great for a oral prostacyclin, but because of their milder disease status, we just say the quality of life impact sometimes isn't worth it. And so in some fraction, I can't give it to you, maybe 15-20% of patients where we're like, an oral prostacyclin would be good, but we just can't justify it. This is exactly where ralinepag will fill that market and expand who can actually get treatment through the prostacyclin pathway.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Lachant. Alrighty. Well, I think that wraps up all the questions in the queue here. And by way of summary, I want to thank Derek and his team, Dr. Lachant, and all of the other investigators. This is some really extraordinary science that we've been able to share with everybody today. And it's especially amazing for me because so often in business, timing is everything. And here, as was elucidated in the call, Selexipag did their trial at a time when there was one background therapy, predominantly a PD-5 inhibitor, and the era of dual background therapies was kind of just over the horizon. So they were not really able to enroll very much of the trial in the dual background therapies. And as Dr. LaShawn explained, as the years rolled on, it was later shown that it really was not that effective in the dual background therapy arena. Whereas today, dual background therapy is all but universal, and the timing of this advanced outcomes therapy was just like a great surfer catching a great wave. You know, we caught the dual background therapy wave perfectly with the timing of the enrollment of Ralinepag, and as a result, we have a best-in-class result, extraordinary efficacy, hazard ratio not seen in any other drugs, and all of this on top of the real reality that is in pulmonary hypertension today and very likely to be the reality of background therapy for the next decade to come. So I just want to thank everybody for all of their contribution to this study. Of course, I'm in huge gratitude to all of the patients from throughout the world. Derek has traveled an insane number of miles around the world enrolling this study. Just to give you a couple of anecdotes, there is a patient who has been on Ralinepag now for 12 years, doing very well, and that patient is in the Ukraine. So the patient was a phase 2 patient who rolled over onto open label therapy. Derek and his team have been adamant about making sure that every patient on open label and, of course, in the trial itself gets their therapy no matter what. So through the war in Ukraine, this patient has been delivered their medicine, and 12 years, still doing very well. Similar situation for patients in Israel through the wars there, as Derek mentioned, through COVID. It's just an amazing execution of a trial, and I cannot give higher kudos to the physicians, the patients, all of the clinical trial team. We had well over 100 Unitherians, United Therapeutics employees, dedicating themselves to this for years and years and years. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and operator, you can now wrap up the call.
Thank you for participating in today's webcast. A rebroadcast of this webcast will be available for replay for 1 year by visiting the Events and Presentations section of the United Therapeutics Investor Relations website at ir.unither.com. Again, that is ir.unither.com. Thank you for joining. You may now disconnect your lines.